Hey everyone, Georgie here with Ukraine Matters. In the last couple of days, I am not sure if you noticed, but if you did, there has been a lot of reporting that there is a big group of North Korean and Russian troops that is set to retake Kursk region of Russia that Ukraine has been holding on for a while now. And it's been reported by the CNN, the New York Times. They said that it's like 50,000 troops that is there and they're prepared and ready. And they even indeed started some massive assaults. And now it's extremely important to see whether or not Ukraine will be able to hold. Well, we already have some first insights in what they might expect. Obviously, I cannot show you the video. The link will be in the description below to the Discord channel where we have the channels for specifically not safe for work videos with war footage and so on. And you can introduce yourself to it. But basically, there has been a couple of days of extensive fighting in the Kursk area right now, mostly on this northern side around Olkovka and so on. There was also some clashes around Pogrebki right over here, and it's been kind of intense. And so far, there has been little to no confirmation by any Russian advances, but there has been incredible amount of video evidence of Russians just being burned to the crisp. All things considered, we can say that whatever they were planning to do, whatever they were attempting to do, it this time failed completely. If before we saw they were able to gain some territory to only then being stopped and then Ukrainians were able to retake some of the territory back, then this time even their initial clashes, even their initial advances were prematurely stopped, and it seems that Ukrainians are getting better and better in fortifying these positions. And remember, this is also the area where some of the more experienced Ukrainian troops are operating. But I want to dive deep a little bit onto the map on some other directions. There has been like the situation developing on the eastern front axis where the Ukrainian hold was cut in half. Russians are really trying to kind of undercut these positions to push Ukrainians back. The key position that we're looking here is Terny. Terny is this village over here. There has been reports of a lot of the Russian assaults in this area, but so far Ukrainians have reported that they have been repelling a lot of these here. Terny is important because they are basically towards the gateway to Torske, and Torske being a gateway to Liman. And Liman is very important. Liman is basically the thing that is holding this pocket pretty much together. If Liman falls, then there is a big likelihood that this pocket will collapse. It's not given, but it's a possibility. Moreover, if we kind of talk about the direction of Chasiv Yar, it's right next to Bakhmut, and Toretsk, which is like south of Bakhmut, these were the secondary directions for the Russian attacks. This is where a lot of the analysts and myself were telling you that it doesn't make sense for Russian to attack. I think that they are overstretching their forces. That while yes, they are putting a lot of pressure in the south, even more towards Avdiivka direction, where to Pokrovsk, where Russia is gaining some ground. It's not completely clear why they're dedicating so much forces also on directions around Chasiv Yar and Toretsk. It's going to be really painful for them. And this is indeed what we've seen developed over the time. They were not able to advance before, and over the last weeks or so, I'm hearing more and more appearing mentions that Ukrainians were able to counterattack and retake certain positions. That means only one thing for me, that the Russians have stopped dedicating a lot of these forces towards these two directions, and they're putting them back to the front line as well. And this is this is expected. It doesn't mean the situation is easy for the Ukrainian armed forces and defenders in those areas, but we know that at least these directions have been deprioritized. The main focus of Russians is, of course, on the Pokrovsk axis, where they are closing down the pockets around Kurakhove. Again, this has been kind of the major stronghold of this area. I was telling you, like even at the start of the year, that this is what Russia can achieve by capturing Avdiivka, and their advances are even slower than I was expecting. Since my last map update, I told you about this pocket. I was actually expecting that we will see a bigger contest for the defensive lines. I will switch to a different map just to show you what I mean. So this is the map from the Blackbird OSINT group, and this map is better because it has some really nice feature. I think I showed you before, but what we can do is we can turn on fortifications. So now you can see what open source analysts have identified as fortifications and fortified positions, and they put them on the map. So, and here we can see kind of broad strokes where the defensive lines of Ukrainians and Russians lie. The defensive line that I was talking to you about, to specifically Kurakhove, which is the key element in this fortification right over here, that's the Kurakhove key point. So there are two major fortifications. There's a fortification line right over here if Russians are advancing from the south. And then there is additional fortification a little bit towards the north, right over Kurakhove. And now we know that Russians are already probing some of their positions around the eastern side of Kurakhove. Plus, they're having a success in advancing from the northern side. But the pocket is still large enough for Ukrainians to resist. It's not large enough to have Ukrainians fully defend this area. In my perspective right now, it's more about like how do we retreat while also inflicting as much damage as possible. So there is not going to be a lot of competition for a lot of positions, I feel. But still, there are a couple of notable defensive lines that Ukraine will still pose to Russians before Russians can collapse this pocket. So with the tempo that Russians have been having, I would say that it's unlikely that this pocket will be closed. Maybe it's going to be closed by December, but we're going to see what's going to be the changes with regards to temperature. And again, Russian forces have been showing the signs of exhaustion. Overall, that's the situation over there. And then I wanted to mention a couple of things, that there are reports right now that Russians are starting to advance around the area of Hulaypole and around the area of Velika Novosilka. So far, we don't know precisely. There has been any videos. Russians obviously are claiming that they're already 17,000 kilometers into Ukrainian territory. Ukrainians are saying no, not even close. Most likely it's specifically these areas. It's area right over here and the area right over here, where, as you can see on this map, there is relatively light fortifications. At least you cannot see them from the satellites. But so far, nothing critical. I will continue monitoring. And the numbers that we're talking about, I've heard about the assaults with 2-3 armored vehicles, which is completely different compared to what we hear, for example, from the northern side in Kursk area, where just in one day Ukrainians have burned down over 20 Russian vehicles altogether. Another comment that I want to address is something that you guys have been telling me in my live streams, and you've been asking what's happening with the Ukrainian anti-air systems. Why are we seeing the drop in the percentage of drones that have been hit? And in a lot of sense, while there is obviously problem with ammunition and anti-air weapons and so on, and Russians are always trying to advance their drone technology, like, color them black or make sure that they have like hidden signature over the night sky. So they're trying to do a lot of these things. But another major thing that is not being said is that Russia also started launching not only the assault drones, but they also started launching a lot of decoy drones. And oftentimes the drone numbers that you would get is actually the total numbers, including the decoy drones that Russians are sending. But if Ukraine can identify decoy drone versus a no decoy drone, it's not making sense for Ukrainians, for example, to shoot the decoy drone down. And then I want to talk about something I talked extensively in my last video, being European dedication on supporting Ukraine. This is especially important now with Donald Trump coming into the office and all of the rumors of potentially US cutting aid to Ukraine. And there have been like some Trumpers that really thought that what I was stating is Europe does nothing, and they're playing like basically taking their information from Donald Trump directly and then trying to put it all together. And there was like, yeah, finally, this pro-Ukrainian guy is validating our points and so on. Well, the problem for the Trumpers is that, well, reality exists. When we're talking about the Ukraine support from both from Europe and US, a lot of times when you see the charts, they're problematic because Europe consists of a lot of smaller countries, whereas US is a one big one. Plus, US is very heavy on a military side. So oftentimes when you see that, you will see very skewed numbers where there's like US dedicated military help, and then there's like other countries and they're like minuscule points of deliveries. However, so in this one, there is this Kiel Institute for Studies, and they have been aggregating a lot of data for specifically what are the promised deliveries to Ukraine and what has actually have been delivered and confirmed to Ukraine. And they've put this up into nice charts. So first things, let's talk about total numbers. And in total numbers, if we compare United States and Europe, including military and humanitarian help, here you can see the blue line, like over here, like I'm gonna circle it out because you cannot see my mouse. So on this chart over here, you can see the blue part, which is actually confirmed and delivered to Ukraine, and then the light blue part, which is promised. And you can see this for United States and Europe. So in total, Europe is almost doubling, if not completely doubling, the help from United States, if we include the promised ones. Obviously, if we look at just delivered, then while it is a lot, it is still less, and the numbers here in billions of euros. Unfortunately, then we go scroll down, and this is the chart that you actually might see a lot of the Trump supporters and someone else throwing in your face, stating, ha ha ha, you see US doing so much, everyone else doing nothing. And this chart is a little bit problematic because, as I said, it breaks down all of the countries by themselves, and secondly, it takes into account only military part. But the problem is when we actually put the Europe together and we compare it in a military aspect. So I made this chart from just raw data from the Kiel Institute. I just took raw data, and here you can see only military deliveries to Ukraine. So at the top here is how much was commitment, and at the bottom here is how much is actually delivered, like the allocations. And you can see Europe in orange and US in blue. And you can see that even with commitment, Europe actually has committed more military aid than United States. And the only thing where US is slightly overtaking Europe is that actually delivered help to Ukraine. That means in reality, if you don't go deep digging for specifically your favorable data, but you actually look at data, then all of the Trumps and all of the MAGA narratives about the fact that Europe is not doing its part to support Ukraine completely falls apart against the reality as it is. And more importantly, which is the argument that I want to make, because I hear this argument all the time about, hey, it's my taxpayers' money that's being helped sent to Ukraine. Well, it's my taxpayers' money as well, because you know what? I'm a citizen of the European Union, I'm a citizen of Latvia, and I'm actually a tax resident of Denmark. So let's put these two statements together, because it is very crucial for us to understand that maybe the person with the widest pocket should potentially contribute more, if they can, for global peace, to make sure that we're protected from this Russian threat. Well, Denmark is taking it very seriously. Denmark is #1 contributor to Ukraine in percentage of GDP. So essentially, comparatively to my income, I've contributed a lot more than some of the other countries. Like if we're talking tax on the individual level, my taxes in percentage to my income and what I'm paying to my taxes, they have done more for Ukraine. If we scroll down, then US is only down here, 0.4%. So when people are telling me from United States, like MAGAs, saying, oh, my taxes are paying Ukraine, I am paying like 4 times more. And I am here supporting Ukraine, and I'm stating that we should do even more. When you don't cherry pick the numbers, then it turns out reality can slap you really hard in the face, and all of your arguments, how supposedly you alone are carrying this war, falls apart. And I want to be very clear. This has nothing to do that US is not important. It is important. Whole world's participation is important. And it's important for one very, very important reason, because help to Ukraine is not a charity. Help to Ukraine is beneficial because A, we can benefit a lot from Ukraine winning. Democracy support, more stable world, we continue dominating as this big Western alliance that completely tips over all of the economies in the world, or if we lose, we are in the losers, and it's us that are supposedly going to be paying the bills, and then there's potential threat of the additional Russian aggression, especially now that they're working with other dictatorial regimes. They're making like a whole axis of evil, like lifting sanctions on North Korea, getting North Korea all of the technologies that supposedly have been prohibited so far. And estimates from the Kiel Institute has actually talked about this, and they said that, hey, if Russia wins in Ukraine, it can cost Germany up to 20 times more than what they're paying. This is the scale. And I know for US, obviously, it is a bit problematic to relate, because you're not going to get a lot of these refugees from Ukraine and so on. You're not going to get a lot of that impact. Fair enough. It is still going to be impacting your country, maybe not 20 times, but it's not a far fetch to consider that you're just going to be worse. And then right now, even with 0.4% of dedication from GDP, you are still completely demolishing one of your biggest adversaries. So there is a discussion about Trump, and the discussion about like that Trump is going to cut off aid to Ukraine and so on. What I want you all to definitely get, especially now there's like talks that Congress supposedly doesn't want to support aid for Ukraine. MAGA is a cult. So what the cult leader says goes. If Trump suddenly decides that, helping Ukraine is good, yeah, then it's going to be, you can just count on this. Like, you're going to be like 1 day's time, every politician is just going to flip-flop and it's going to start supporting Ukraine once again. And also the comments section, oh, we've been for Ukraine all along. We never had this Donald Jr. or everyone else right now on shitter stating that Ukrainians should count down to the time until Donald Trump comes in so that he can cut off all of the aid to Ukraine. The point that I'm making here is that Donald Trump is, I don't want to say reasonable, but it's negotiable. Like, he still would like to have better deal for himself and for his vision of America, to keep his political capital, build his non-liberal democracy. In my perspective, the things that can appeal to Trump is, for example, winning over China. Because if there is enough of possibilities to convince that Russia winning in Ukraine would get China into a better place and put his US into a worse place, that is a potential angle to attack. I'm not saying that it's going to work, but I'm just saying that there's a lot more moving pieces here. So if you can convince Trump, that will be done. And to wrap it up, two very important statements. Statement number one, I finally decided to completely ditch Twitter. I think it's been going downhill for a while now, with Elon Musk completely going Musk off fascist. And now it's absolutely obvious that the algorithms of shitter are completely skewed towards pushing certain narratives. We see this being like pro-Ukrainian supported being demoted, anti-Ukrainians being promoted, and so on. It's a fascist platform, and they're openly skewing it towards one side. So there is little reason to stay on it unless you really want to participate in self-harm, so to say. Instead, I'm moving towards Blue Sky. Some people were asking, why not Mastodon? I don't know, maybe I'll check it out, but this is the platform that I knew about, and a lot of the Ukrainian supporters are moving here as well. Join up, move on. We're going to post here. I'm going to put a lot more content here. I'm not sure if it's going to work, but I will try to do it best. But what it means for you is that there's going to be a lot more content, both in video, in communication, and also in writing. I will be putting a lot of text there, some analysis, talking about certain videos. Join up, participate, and most importantly, if you can, participate in our campaign for Ukrainian armed forces. We're getting the trucks, we're getting the drones, we're 60% way down to get this done. Let's get it done. I love you. Slava Ukraini, and I'll see you next time.